Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. The narrative begins with 26-year-old Kenna Rowan returning to a town that holds the heaviest, most agonizing memories of her life. With russet-colored hair cut neatly below her chin and striking green eyes that hide a quiet, fierce storm of sadness, Kenna has just finished serving 5 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. Her crime was the accidental death of her boyfriend, Scotty. On her cab ride into town, she asks the driver to pull over so she can rip Scotty's roadside memorial cross out of the dirt, knowing he would have hated it. She arrives at Paradise Apartments, a depressing, rundown complex where the gruff landlord, Ruth, forces her to adopt a tiny orange and black kitten in exchange for waiving the electricity deposit. Kenna names the kitten Ivy, after a fellow inmate who once saved her sanity in prison by telling her she had to choose to either live in her sadness or die in it. Now Kenna is choosing to live, driven by one ultimate goal: finding a way to meet her 4-year-old daughter Diem, who was taken from her at birth and is currently being raised by Scotty's fiercely protective, grieving parents. Craving a brief escape from her bleak apartment, Kenna walks downtown and enters what used to be a local bookstore where she and Scotty spent their Sundays. She is surprised to find it has been transformed into a bustling local bar called Ward's. Behind the counter is the owner, Ledger Ward. Ledger is a former professional football player nearing 30, with tattooed arms, long dark hair that falls effortlessly into his eyes, and a fluid, unbothered grace to his movements. Neither recognizes the other. Ledger is immediately captivated by the sad, beautiful girl in the green t-shirt, and when Kenna asks for an extravagant coffee, Ledger playfully crafts a makeshift drink topped with whipped cream and a cherry. The small kindness causes Kenna to quietly cry. When she returns to the bar later that night, she introduces herself by her middle name, Nicole. Their undeniable chemistry leads them to the alley behind the bar, where they share a passionate, heavy makeout session in his truck. They are only interrupted by a passing police cruiser, prompting a flustered Kenna to flee back to her apartment. Determined to build a life, Kenna secures a job bagging groceries, befriending an eccentric manager named Amy and a brutally honest teenage coworker with Down syndrome named Lady Diana. Meanwhile, Ledger slowly pieces together who the mysterious Nicole actually is. The horrific realization clicks into place when he finds Kenna standing on the curb outside Patrick and Grace Landry's house. Patrick and Grace are Scotty's parents, kind, loving people who have survived the unimaginable loss of their miracle child only by pouring all their affection into Diem. Ledger lives right across the street and considers himself Diem's ultimate protector. When he intercepts Kenna, he physically pushes her away from the property, furious that the woman who left his best friend to die has returned to disrupt the peaceful lives of the family she shattered. He drives her back to her apartment and coldly demands she leave town, reminding her that her parental rights were permanently terminated. Despite his deep-seated resentment, Ledger is haunted by Kenna's raw agony. His perspective begins to shift when Kenna's desperate existence collides with Diem's world. Diem is a vibrant, imaginative 4-year-old with Kenna's hair and eyes, but Scotty's radiant smile. She talks endlessly about dragons and invents her own vocabulary for things she doesn't understand. Ledger loves her as if she were his own, having recently canceled his own wedding to a woman named Leah, because Leah resented how much of a priority Diem was in his life. One afternoon, Grace accidentally brings Diem to the grocery store where Kenna works. Ledger spots them and frantically rushes Grace and Diem out of the parking lot before Kenna can reach them. Kenna is utterly devastated, chasing the car and collapsing in tears on the pavement. Ledger pulls his truck over, his heart breaking for the weeping mother. Sitting together in the grass by the side of the road, Ledger finally sees Kenna not as a remorseless killer, but as a shattered, desperate woman. He pulls out his phone and shows Kenna videos of Diem. For the very first time in her life, Kenna gets to see her daughter laugh, speak, and smile. It is a profoundly beautiful, tear-soaked moment that irrevocably shifts the dynamic between Ledger and Kenna. Wanting to help her save enough money to eventually leave town, Ledger secretly hires Kenna to wash dishes in the back of his bar on weekends. She works alongside Aaron, a burly but gentle cook, and Roman, a limping former football player whom Ledger previously helped through rehab. Ledger and Kenna's undeniable connection erupts into a passionate romance hidden from the rest of the town. He takes her to a sprawling modern house he is building in the secluded woods, and amidst the sawdust and unfinished floors, they sleep together. During their quiet moments, Kenna shares memories of Scotty, recalling how they once visited an antique store where Scotty fell in love with a $4,000 antique ring with a pink stone. Unable to afford it, he playfully bought her 10 tiny rubber hands instead. To cope with her overwhelming grief over the years, Kenna reveals she has written over 300 letters to Scotty, pouring her soul into pages he will never read. But their secret bliss is shadowed by an agonizing reality. The Landrys, terrified by Kenna's return, have filed a restraining order against her. The fragile bubble finally bursts when Patrick Landry spots Ledger's truck parked outside Kenna's dumpy apartment and sees Diem's car seat inside. Feeling intensely betrayed by the boy he considers a second son, Patrick confronts Ledger in his front yard and punches him in the face. Realizing she is tearing apart the only family her daughter has, Kenna decides she must leave town. She packs her suitcase, tearfully telling Ledger that he must support Diem and the Landrys, and that she absolutely refuses to be the reason they suffer anymore. Refusing to let the woman he loves walk away, Ledger takes a massive gamble. He secretly accesses Kenna's phone and forwards a document to himself containing the most pivotal letter Kenna ever wrote to Scotty. Ledger marches into the Landry's house and begs Patrick and Grace for 20 minutes to read the letter, staking his entire relationship with them on this one desperate plea. The letter details the horrific truth of the night of the accident. Kenna explains how they flipped upside down in a ditch on a rural gravel road. She panicked, unable to pull Scotty out from under the crushed metal. In the dark, she mistook his mangled, bloodied arm and lack of a pulse for death. Shattered and hysterical, she wandered onto the highway, deliberately trying to walk into traffic to end her own life so she could be with him. She woke up the next morning covered in blood, only to be arrested and told Scotty had actually survived for hours after she left, crawling toward the road for help. Her silence during her sentencing wasn't a lack of remorse. She had simply been too broken to defend herself, entirely consumed by the fact that she caused his death. In the letter, Kenna repeatedly writes that she is not a bad person, and she begs for the forgiveness she has been entirely unable to give herself. The absolute despair in the letter shatters the Landrys' long-held hatred. The next morning, as Kenna is preparing to disappear forever, Grace knocks on her apartment door. Grace sits beside a weeping Kenna and hands her a small black velvet pouch. Inside is the stunning antique ring with the pink stone. Grace explains that Scotty had secretly borrowed money from them to buy this exact ring for Kenna before he died, intending to propose. Weeping together on the couch, Grace forgives Kenna, telling her that they must go forward together. She realizes that for the last 5 years, they have all been drowning in the exact same agonizing grief. Ledger arrives at the apartment to find the two women embracing, and the heavy, suffocating burden they have all carried is finally lifted. Ledger and Kenna walk hand in hand to the Landry's house. In the backyard, Kenna crawls into a wooden jungle gym and sits across from her beautiful, vibrant daughter. With tears in her eyes, Kenna gently explains that she is her mother, noting that she carried her in her tummy. Diem accepts her instantly and without a single ounce of resentment, pulling Kenna out of the jungle gym to push her on the swings. Diem even asks Ledger if he is going to marry her mom, seamlessly blending Kenna into the fabric of her life. The story jumps forward in an epilogue to reveal that the broken pieces of their past have formed a beautiful, unified mosaic. Kenna, Ledger, Diem, and the Landrys exist as a seamlessly blended family, sharing dinners and dividing time between their homes without an ounce of lingering bitterness. Kenna and Ledger welcome a newborn baby boy into the world. Looking down at her son through teary eyes, Kenna smiles and softly whispers, "Hi, Scotty."